Tennessee Titans fans, we got a little bit of Tennessee Titans drama on this Thursday afternoon. Some of the ghosts of the Titans past kind of starting to talk a little bit about what might have happened and what might have not happened regarding their leaving the organization. I'm talking about former GM Rand Carthon and former head coach Mike Vrabel. Now, earlier this week, before I show you this clip, Mike Vrabel talked about the rumors that the Titans were unwilling to make a trade with the Patriots at the trade deadline this year because Amy didn't want to do business with Mike Vrabel in that way. Vrabel pretty much said he has not spoken to Amy since the day he was fired, and any rumors with the two of them should not be treated with any credibility at all because they have not spoken. Now, that was a separate issue. This is Rand Carthon on a podcast talking about his leaving the Titans, being fired by the Titans, and some reports that might not have been true. Listen.
Like, there was a lot of bullshit out there about he and I not getting along. Like, that wasn't true.
Talking about Vrabel.
There was never a moment where we didn't get along. And truth be told, my daughter, she's just got home from practice. She's walking through the house. Probably the first few months after Vrabes got let go, like the screensaver on her phone was a picture of her and Vrabes from pregame, because they had a really close, unique relationship. But like I said, the day I got let go, the very first text message I got was from Vrabes.
Wow, that's awesome.
And was like, hey man, sorry this happened. Wish you nothing but the best. Let me know how I can help you. Type of thing. I'll say it like.
So, first of all, the first thing I want to say, I'd give anything to see that conversation or to hear that conversation between Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon. Some of the things they've probably got to say about Titans ownership and the Titans organization. I'm sure that's juicy. There's a reason why these people have to sign NDAs, by the way, when they get fired by organizations. There's a reason they have to sign NDAs. And there's only so much they could say. That goes for John Robinson, Rand Carthon, Mike Vrabel, anybody. But if you go back to when Rand Carthon was hired, after they fired John Robinson and they hired Rand Carthon, there was a lot of speculation about Vrabel doesn't like him, or Carthon doesn't like Vrabel. Vrabel doesn't like Carthon. They don't like each other. They don't get along. They don't see eye to eye. I believe what Rand Carthon is saying right there. I believe that he and Vrabel were friends. I believe they did get along, and I believe they still get along with this day. I believe he is obviously telling the truth about how close his daughter came to be with Vrabel. I think he is telling the truth about Vrabel reaching out to him when he was fired. I think all of that's true. I think they had a bond, and they worked together well, and they tried to make it work. What I also think is true is the report that came out however long ago that Mike Vrabel did not want Rand Carthon to be the new GM, not because of anything personal, but just because he didn't feel like he was ready. Mike Vrabel did not feel like Rand Carthon was ready to be an NFL GM. In fact, Mike Vrabel wanted to do what Mike Vrabel likes to do, which is elevate from within. He wanted Ryan Cowden, who was already in the organization and somebody that Vrabel had worked with, he wanted Ryan Cowden to be elevated to the new GM, and Amy didn't want that. She wanted an outside hire. She went with Rand Carthon. I think Vrabel probably did push back on that behind the scenes. I think he probably did make it known, this guy's not ready to be a GM. He's not ready for this. I'm sure he's a good guy. I'm sure he'll get there someday, but right now he's not ready to do this. I would rather elevate from within. And I think that ultimately is the moment that was the beginning of the end for Vrabel in Nashville, because I think that's the moment that things started going in opposite directions. I think that's the very thing that created the tension between Vrabel and ownership, is that he pushed back and said, I don't think this guy is ready, and they hired him anyway. They hired Rand Carthon anyway and didn't side with the coach who had had success here for many years at that point and probably had earned the right for his voice to be heard. They chose to hire the guy that he said probably wasn't ready. So I think that part of that is true. I think that Vrabel and Rand probably had very different ideas philosophy-wise. I think that Vrabel had different ideas philosophy-wise than pretty much everybody in the Titans organization. I think that he had a different philosophy than Amy. I think Vrabel wanted more power. I think he wanted more control over the roster. I think Vrabel wanted to have more of a say-so over things, and Amy wasn't willing to do that. I think Vrabel wanted his kind of GM. I think he wanted a bigger role in picking the new GM that he did not get. And so I think that's where the tension started. I think Vrabel and Rand tried to make it work. I think they got along great. I think they tried to make it work and make it happen. But you have two different philosophies. And then what happens is, if you start the tension with, okay, I don't want you to hire this guy. I would rather you hire this guy over here, and you don't listen to me. You hire him anyway. You know I wanted more control over the roster. You chose not to give it to me, so now we have tension. Okay, then you come out the next season and you go 6-11. You come out the next season and, you know, some free agent pickups don't work out. Some draft picks don't work out. You take the trip over to Foxborough on the bye week and you say what you say there. When you go out on the field and you're chilling with Robert Kraft and the Titans don't look good and they go out and get embarrassed in the Oiler throwbacks, it all starts seeming like a snowball that's building out of control. And what it results in is Mike Vrabel being fired. All because the owner didn't want to sit down and talk through this with him. And that's the key here. If you had a problem with something to do with Vrabel, if you're Amy Adams Strunk and you got a problem with something Vrabel said or done, you handle it like adults, right? You get in a room and you talk it out and you try to reach a conclusion and you try to reconcile it so that you can move forward as an organization. Instead, you just sit back, keep quiet, let all of this fester inside of you, and then when the season ends, it boils over and you fire him. And then a year later, you fire Rand Carthon, proving Vrabel right when he said this guy's not ready to be a GM. Rand Carthon went on to prove he was not ready to be an NFL GM. So now not only did you fire Vrabel, but then a year later, you pretty much said he was right. We shouldn't have hired this guy. Such is the Tennessee Titans organization. I think Vrabel and Carthon were close. I think they got close. I think they had a good friendship, even if they didn't have the same philosophy on how to run this organization. And I think the tension with Vrabel was not so much about Rand. I think it was just about Vrabel being a very different type of coach than what Amy wanted. And hopefully, Amy has learned over these few years how to do business. I hope she has learned, that if there's something that you're not as sure about, maybe you need to put people in place that are more educated on it than you so that they can make the decisions. But there are still people in this organization right now who are responsible for some of this incompetence that we've seen over the years, and they're still employed. That's why Mike Borgonzi needs to be the guy heading up this head coaching search, because he's the most competent one here right now. I got questions about Chad Brinker. I sure have questions about Amy. But this is just a perfect example of what happens when you don't communicate well and you don't handle business the right way. You hired the wrong GM. You had a coach with experience who was telling you you were hiring the wrong GM, and you chose to do it anyway. Why? Just to spite the head coach? It's no wonder this organization's in the shape it's in, folks. Things got to get better. This isn't high school. This isn't high school. This is not a soap opera. This is an NFL football team that has gone down quickly because of stuff like this. Tighten up, everybody.